thank you for joining us for this conversation around the reopening of barbershops and beauty salons. Metromorphosis is excited and pleased to partner with Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome and her team in providing this informational session. We will flow through some remarks from the mayor. We have a few poll questions that we are interested in gathering your input, and we want to provide some information for you on the reopening and the guidance for cosmetologies, the practice of cosmetology in East Baton Rouge Parish, and we will have a space for question and answers. I will share now and I will share later that we would ask that you would post your questions in the chat space. And so on the bottom of your screen, you will see a tab that says chat. If you will click on that, if you have a question once we get started, if you will enter your question from there, and I will be monitoring the chat box and sharing those questions with Ms. Courtney Scott from the mayor's office and Mr. Michael Mitchell from Metromorphosis. I will share with you before we get started that it is very likely that we will not have an answer for every question that is asked today. The commitment that we do make to you is that we will do our very best to gather an answer to your question and to share those answers with everyone who has registered and who takes part in this call. And so without further ado, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome, to thank her for her partnership in this effort, to thank her for her leadership in this community, and as importantly, to thank her for being accessible to our community in such an important time. And so Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Brother Raymond Jetson, for that introduction and for the work that Metromorphosis has been doing in this space. And I want to thank all of you all for joining us today to discuss your businesses and the reopening of barbershops and salons. I want to start by thanking you for your continued contributions to your community and your adherence to the stay-at-home policy. That's been very important that you've adhered to and that you've complied with the stay-at-home order. You know, I understand the challenges that you face during this time of change and adversity, and I certainly sympathize with your situation. As Governor Edwards said during his press conference yesterday, Louisiana's stay-at-home order, as you well know, is going to end this Friday. And so the state will now be transitioning to phase 1 of reopening. And in the coming days, businesses across the state will prepare to reopen their doors and transition into what I am describing as our new reality. You've heard some people describe it as the new normal. I am describing it as a new reality for us. Now, this new reality will include the guidelines for phase 1 put in place by the governor. Your businesses will soon be allowed to reopen with limitations in place. And I hope we can use this call and this time to address plans for reopening and what that means to each of you. The guidelines put in place by the Louisiana Department of Health will allow you to reopen with 25% occupancy, with frequent sanitation and space for physical distancing, all of which will be explained during this call. That's one of our goals, to make sure that we help our local businesses here understand what this new phase 1 opening means for us. And so due to the nature of this industry, I'm sure that these measures may require additional protocol with your businesses. I want to make it known that the lines of communication with my office are open to you, and I will continue to communicate any information or resources with businesses here in Baton Rouge, because these mitigation efforts may make a complete return to this new, or should I say, an advance to this new reality seem far away. But I want to encourage you, and I love that song that was on while we were in the waiting room. Ain't no stopping us now. And we have to repel negativity and embrace positivity as we move forward. I want to encourage you to remain positive because we can get through this. It was only a few weeks ago when the state of Louisiana had one of the highest rate growths in the United States. But following mitigation guidelines such as physical distancing, social distancing, and limiting occupancy is what has allowed our community to begin our recovery so quickly. So my goal for East Baton Rouge Parish is to successfully reopen. I know our community is resilient and is capable of doing so. Our collaboration in these efforts will protect both our businesses and our community, because these efforts are not mutually exclusive. A successful reopening will allow our state to continue to move forward and work towards our new reality. And I'm sure our barbershops and beauty salons will not only thrive as before, but return stronger than ever. They say that distance makes the heart grow fonder, and it is safe to say that the coronavirus pandemic has proven this to be true, because our community has a much stronger appreciation for the services that all of you all provide. And I imagine this will be evident as your businesses begin to reopen. Once again, before I conclude, I want to say this. Remember that focusing on our economic development and opening and reopening our businesses cannot be mutually exclusive to having a safe and healthy community. While we do this, we have to make sure that simultaneously and at the same time, we are focused on maintaining a safe and healthy community. And so I believe that our community can achieve this new reality, move into this new reality successfully and effectively. And with that being said, thank you once again. And I am going to turn it back over or turn it over to A.V. Mitchell. Thank you all so much, and God bless.
Hello, everyone. How are you? My name is Michael A.V. Mitchell, and I want to thank you all for being on this call, and just thank you for the service that you're doing to your communities, because we all know that if the city of Baton Rouge would open up without you guys opening up your doors, this would be a scary place to be, seeing all these people without their hair done. So we thank you for being who you are in your communities. And also, you know, two places I came familiar with growing up were the church and the barbershop. I mean, those places were places you could hear about the sports, you could hear about all sorts of stuff, and, you know, we made some friends there. So we look forward to you all being open again and bringing back a vibrant part of the fabric of this community. And the purpose for this call is also to inform you guys, give you some direction, as well as offer a space for questions and connecting with us further if you choose to do so. As we know, there's other information that will be needed throughout this process. We're committed to be here with you throughout this process. And so for questions and answers, there is a chat room. So if you push the screen, there's some icons that'll pop up, and you can go to the chat room and put your questions there. And we will answer some of your questions before this call is wrapped up. And any other questions, we will also give you some information where you can get in touch with us to just walk you throughout this process and provide any help or resources that are within our means. So at this point, I will turn you over. Well, first of all, we have a poll. We're going to start with a poll because we don't know who all is comfortable with opening up their shop at this time. So this poll that will come up momentarily, you see your options there. How comfortable with reopening your business? Not at all, somewhat, but concerned. Mostly comfortable, totally comfortable. Please choose one of those by pushing your answer on your screen, and it'll show you where to go after that. and push submit. I'll give you a couple minutes to do so, literally a couple minutes. We're at about 118 seconds now, something like that. For those with the old phones, we'll give you a couple more seconds. All right, so by this time, everyone should have answered that poll, and I'll turn it over now to Ms. Courtney Scott, who will provide us with some very pertinent information, which is an overview for guidance and other things as such.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, AV, and Mr. Jetson as well, and Mayor. So we wanted to share some information with you all, and I believe that there's going to be a presentation that will be shared to give you some insight and details from a state level as well as a regional level for where we are as a parish. Within the mayor's office, I am the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer that manages MOSEP, which is our Mayor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. So when experiencing pandemics like coronavirus or COVID-19, we stand up our Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. And within that, Mayor Broome created a pipeline and relationship that always happens during times like this with the governor's office. So the information that you're looking at comes from the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals. And this is their gating criteria. You've probably seen this chart in the past on the governor's press conferences, but what I wanted to share and why I wanted to give you this information is to give you some insight on how to read it. The first one you're looking at, of course, is from last week, actually about 2 weeks ago now. As you look at this, there are 3 main criteria that are being used to figure out where our state is and our region. You'll see that Baton Rouge is region 2. As you're looking at that, you see the areas of COVID-like illnesses. So people that are experiencing symptoms of COVID-19, you also see cases and hospitalization. Those 3 things are some of the criteria that are being used to see if we're actually flattening the curve. You hear Mayor Broome and the governor talk about flattening the curve all the time, which is making sure that we don't inundate our hospitals. But those are the 3 areas that you're looking at. So as you see, a few weeks ago, Baton Rouge was decreasing in COVID-like illnesses, but it was increasing in cases and hospitalization. So that's why you saw some of those guidelines and the stay-at-home order being extended until the 15th, which is rapidly approaching. So if you go to the next slide, this is what the governor shared yesterday. And you see that Baton Rouge, which is region 2, and it's not just the city of Baton Rouge or East Baton Rouge Parish, it also includes areas like West Baton Rouge, St. Helena, East Helena, and West, and a lot of the other surrounding areas, Ascension Parish as well, and Livingston. So if you see that within region 2, we are decreasing in COVID-like illnesses, we are decreasing in hospitalizations, but we're plateauing in cases. But that's why it's very important, as you hear Mayor Broome share often, that we need to mask up and make sure that we are practicing social distancing and working with the best precautions that we can. So we're going to get into some of that information today that's specific to your industry and how you're able to open up and see customers. So yesterday, the order was relaxed just a bit to allow the cosmetology industry to have 25% capacity. So when you want to figure out what 25% of your capacity is, each of you should have an occupancy permit and be permitted through the state fire marshal that lets you know how many people can be within your space. So you'll take 25% of that. Let's say that your occupancy is 100, you're able to have 25 people within a space at one time. But what's very, very, very important to remember is that throughout all of this, we're putting safety first. We're going to do, my mother used to always tell me that we were given 5 senses, so you have to use that in the case of what you're trying to do. So you want to make sure that you are using the most precautions when you're getting back to it. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, as Mayor just mentioned, but what's really important is making sure that you practice the best guidelines, which we're going to prepare you for today, as possible to make sure that we don't have a spike back in those numbers. As we continue to look at them, we don't want to see those numbers increasing. We don't want to see hospitalization cases or anyone with COVID-like illnesses increase. And that's possible because COVID-19 has a state that is called asymptomatic. And when something is asymptomatic, that means that they are not exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19, However, a person may be positive. And you see that a lot. So you want to make sure that just because a person looks and feels and sounds like they're okay, that does not mean that they don't have COVID-19 or that they may not be positive. So we have to use the best precautions. And that's not to scare anyone. It's just a reality of what we're dealing with. But there are measures in place that can help. So we'll go to the next slide. What's very important to understand is who are the high-risk individuals that are still encouraged to stay at home during phase 1, which is what we will enter starting May 16th. We still encourage these folks to stay at home. That is individuals that are 65 years or older, people that are long-term care facility residents, and other vulnerable individuals. That means that they're immunocompromised or they have one or more of the following health conditions with poor to little control. That's having high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, chronic kidney disease, heart disease. That is something that we have seen that is affluent throughout the African American community. So we felt it was very important to share some of this information with each of you in the call today, because some of your clients may be experiencing these same symptoms. They may be a part of this as well. So if they suffer with any of these symptoms or have any of the health conditions, they really need to stay at home. And that's something that's really important because we know a lot of you have participated in hair and health. And that is something that, you know, when it comes to high blood pressure, it suffers within our community. As we continue to move on, we'll go to the next slide. Phase 1, what groups and populations are inside of phase 1? So that is the area that we're in, 25% occupancy, exercising extreme sanitation and spacing for social distancing. This slide was shared yesterday on the governor's conference call, and it comes directly from the Louisiana Department of Health. As you'll see, barbers and salons are within that, but there are some very strict guidelines that are important. One of those things that's really important is maintaining the space that you need for individuals to still be 6 feet apart. There's a suggestion that says if you have tables or, for your instance, chairs where you're providing services, that they are actually spaced 10 feet apart. Because if they're spaced 10 feet apart, that really allows space even within those 6 feet. So as you start to look at your workspaces and shared spaces, if you're actually a salon owner, those are things that you may need to think about. Do you possibly have to look at adjusted schedules? Do you have to look at any of that information? And one thing I want to share is there's a document that we'll be sharing with everyone after this call. So I know that there's a lot of info that's being shared. All of this will be shared with you after the conference call, along with directives that come specifically from the Louisiana State Board of Cosmetology, which we're going to go through some of those things. We can go to the next slide. One of the most important ways for you to stay connected to all of the information is through Open Safely Louisiana. This is a portal that Governor Edwards has put together along with the state fire marshal to ensure that business owners and church leaders receive up-to-date information on what phase your business or church may be considered as a part of. The phases are what the state has considered how we're going to return if your occupancy increases, and giving you the most specific sanitation guidelines and information that you need. Again, that is Open Safely. It's opensafely.la.gov. We have a link to that in the document that will be shared with you. We strongly encourage everyone to join and make sure that you register for this site, because this is the best way to get the information to you. This is a statewide platform that will give you direct information from the Department of Health, the State Fire Marshal, and the Governor's Office that is specific to your business. They'll also have contact information for you as well to continue to share resources for each of you as well. So now let's talk about getting directly into your business and the work that you do in phase 1. There are some key things that you'll need to do as you go back to work. And this is prior to opening the salon to customers on a daily basis. We want to make sure that you have thermometers, because services cannot be provided to any customers who have symptoms consistent with COVID-19, and that starts with a fever exceeding 100.3. So if they have had a fever or they've had any of those symptoms within the past 72 hours, it's very important that you do not provide services for that customer. The other part is it's really important that you yourself are checking to make sure that you're making sure you're checking their temperature, not just for yourself, but for other clients who may be exposed to your space as well. Checking temperatures is one of the most important parts about being successful as a business within this. And there are thermometers that you have that you don't have to use. A lot of people think about the thermometers that you stick in your ear or under your tongue. Those are not the ones that you want to use here. There's infrared thermometers that you can purchase to put out there that you can just scan on a person's forehead or on the side of their face. It's contactless, there's no touch. And within that, you'll be able to get their temperature and note that for the safety of yourself and your customers. Also, any items that cannot be sanitized need to be removed from the service area. That's waiting area, chairs, upholstered furniture, different drapery, magazines that people will share, anything that's in a space that different people will be picking up and touching together. You know those things within your shop, but at this time, it's not in the best interest of yourself or your customers to have those things in the salon at this time. Also, we talked about this a little bit earlier, making sure that your stations are 10 feet apart from each other, making sure that individuals are 6 feet apart when you are providing services. We can go to the next slide. Additionally, any refreshments that are offered to customers must be in sealed containers. I know a lot of times that you'll pour water or share those different things with people, but it's very important that during this time, and this comes directly from the Board of Cosmetology, that everything is self-contained, single serving, and that they're in disposable containers. People should not be sharing glasses or anything like that. I know sometimes people like to get fancy and use glass, but at this point, we're going to have to stay disposable and use those plastic containers or containers that can be thrown away after use. Now, this is something that may be a little bit hard for people to navigate and understand, but being in a COVID-19 state, I think you can understand this to say that clients must wait outside of the salon and observe social distancing requirements. So you want to think about that in your scheduling and how you schedule people to make sure that there is a cushion between people of time. And I know that that sounds really tough because if you're thinking from an entrepreneurial standpoint, that is impacting the dollars that you're able to receive. However, this is just phase one. We're doing this on a phase basis because we want to make sure that we're walking into this with care and also monitoring our cases that are happening at the same time and reducing the chances for people to be exposed. When you have people sitting in waiting areas, that's more people within a space and also taking up that occupancy percentage as well. And then lastly, each staff member and staff members and customers need to wear face coverings while in the salon. That's for yourself and for the clients. So face coverings can be just a scarf that is tied tightly over the nose and mouth. And you also need to make sure that it can be a mask. It can be different. I've seen people take sleeves from turtlenecks, but it is a cloth covering that you wash on a daily basis to cover your nose and face fully. That's something that customers need to have as well. And we want to ensure that you are following those guidelines because it's important for you and your customers. There's also parts about sanitization as well. Now, we know that with being in the Board of Cosmetology and looking at that, cosmetologists, I feel like, are a strong ambassadorship for sanitary practices because you already have to do them. A lot of those same practices are going to be key for you, but we just need to make sure that, you know, you're staying on top of it and what you need to do. And all this information is in the sheet that we're sharing. You need to have reusable tools that need to be cleaned and sanitized and sterilized after each use. And then also when it comes to your capes, we need to make sure that they're being disinfected or they need to be disposable. This is a little bit different for some people when you're using capes or you just put your collars on, but in this case, they need to be disinfected through each person that's being used. Additionally, you also want to make sure that you're wiping down your stations and your chairs with an EPA registered bacterial or fungal disinfectant. It's really important that you're doing that in between customers because you want to make sure you're providing a sanitary environment. One thing that I also want to share with you as well is it's probably important for you to make sure that your customers know that you're taking these extra precautions to keep yourself and them safe. So make sure that you're communicating that with them as well. So phase 1 is expected to last through June 5th. But one thing that's very important to remember is we're looking at this from a data-driven standpoint, which means those 3 factors that I shared with you before, which are cases, hospitalization, and the number of people that are exhibiting COVID-like illness or seeking care for COVID-like illnesses are the factors that are there. So it's not always by date. Date is an important thing for us to remember, but the data is what's most important because we want to make sure we put the safety of our communities first. I will be on the call throughout the entire time to answer any questions and to share information. And again, a lot of the details that I shared will be emailed to you as well in a document that came from the Louisiana Board of Cosmetology. One more reminder for everyone, it's really important that you take the time to register your business with Open Safely LA. It's very important to do that because that's where the most real-time updates will come. We're gathering this information from a parish level, but especially for you because you're operated through the Louisiana Board of Cosmetology from the state, that information specific to your industry will be rolled out real time in that app. And we want to make sure that people are the most educated and up to date with all the information that's being released. So as Mayor Broome mentioned, we are here to support you. It is her mission to make sure that our businesses recover and reopen, and we're here to make sure that you get that as much as you can. And I want to take the time as well to thank Metromorphosis for allowing us to have this platform to engage with you to make sure that we know what the needs are. And I hope this isn't our last time talking.
Okay, so we're about to, thank you, Courtney. We're about to enter into the Q&A session. So anyone who has a question, please go to the chat room, put your questions into that chat room. I know that you may have to adjust your phone a little bit, might look crazy for a second. That's cool, it's expected because everybody's about to start typing. So just put your questions in that chat room if you haven't already. And one thing I can appreciate, well, a lot of things I can appreciate, but one thing specifically I can appreciate about Courtney giving that information is that, like, I learned different. So I can read a lot of stuff, but it's something, it says something else when people tell it to me. So sometimes I need to hear things in order for it to really hit home. So like what you said about the capes, you know, people just take the capes, you take it in, you throw it out, put it on the next person, and that's not really sanitizing. So we have to, you know, think about that. You can't put the same cape on the next person the next time you know, cut the next guy's hair, or whether you're doing someone's hair. So this is very useful information. 3 things, everyone that's on the call. All of you who register and who are under the sound of my voice now, as we say at church, will receive an email, a follow-up email with some sources. Like I know they'll have a link from the governor's office. Well, with the information from the governor's office, it'll also be a link from the cosmetology board and some other information. And in addition to that, I put my email in the chat room as well for further guidance. It says michael@metromorphosis.net. If you have a question you don't want to put in that chat room, and it's more private, email me at michael@metromorphosis.net, and we'll be confidential, and we'll try to find some type of assistance to you within our means to just to suit that question. And now for our next poll, we're almost done. We're on this call for one reason, guys, and that's to help you. To get information out there. We figure this is meaningful and we want to help you. So here's the poll. What would be most helpful in your reopening? So ongoing safety information, access to personal protection equipment, or PPE as we call it, and financial resources or other. So answer that question for us to let us know what could help you. And then what happens is, as you answer these questions, it tells us what percentage of people said what. So, and with that, we'll know, okay, in the community of barbers and stylists, we know what's needed the most because 70% of people said they needed PPE or they needed a certain type of help. So that lets us know, what's lacking. So after you've answered that, I'll give you 20 more seconds for the people with the old phones. And we will go to our Q&A section, and those questions will come directly from the chat room, and Mr. Jetson will lead us in our Q&A session and quarterback it from there. All right, we have our answers to our poll. All right, 54% was the leading percentage, which was access to personal protection equipment. It's also, okay, that's good information to know. And we'll be able to give with Courtney, give with the mayor's office, and see how you all can be assisted in that as well. Mr. Jetson.
Thank you very much, Michael. I will start with some of the questions. And as I shared early on, I want to be very transparent with everyone that we may not have all of the answers to the questions today, but we will attempt to get answers, and we will be following up as a group. The first question, Courtney and Michael, was about traveling stylists and barbers, because the governor's or what the governor's phase one anticipates is services being performed only in a licensed salon and not in customers' homes. And the question was, when would there be an opportunity for those services to resume? Would it be correct to say that that is a decision that's driven by the governor's office, or is it located somewhere else?
Absolutely. It's correct that it's coming from the governor's office and the Louisiana Board of Cosmetology. So if you're a licensed stylist that does travel styling, I think it's important for you to reach out to the Board of Cosmetology. I'll make sure that I share their phone number in case you don't have it from their website. Within that, what's important is to see that it absolutely in phase one only allows services to be provided inside a salon. So in the document that you're getting, it says no cosmetology services shall be performed in the home of a customer. And honestly, when you think about that, again, I know that a lot of this impacts everyone economically, but you're going inside of a person's home. You're not sure what you're exposed to. It's an uncontrollable situation, and it protects you and it protects them as well. Phase one is something that you do have to decide whether you want to be a part of. We've had other industries that have said, if I can only operate at 25% capacity, that's not beneficial to me. That's something that each of you are going to have to individually consider and look at to make the understanding of what you want to do. If possible, there's another question that speaks a little bit on this as well, if I could just add to that, and I think it may knock it out. Okay, I'm gonna go. The silence must know I'm gonna go. There's also a person that asked about social distancing and styling period, because you have to be so close to your clients. Well, that's why it's very, very important for you to take their temperature, because that's one of the biggest indicators when it comes to COVID-19, and also having a discussion about safety with them. You can set your protocols of what you need to do individually for your business. That's also why it's important for both people to have on masks as well. So going into someone's home, socially distancing, or how is it possible? Those are all things that you have to consider with interaction. So it's really important for you to think about that and make sure you're checking that temperature and mask and having conversations with your clients.
And Courtney, I would add to that, that in this business, where the relationship between the client and the barber or the stylist is in such proximity that the social distancing really applies to other customers who are there. There's absolutely no way that that can occur, which is why certainly all of the professionals who are on this call and who are in this business need to make the decision that you are willing to go into that personal space.
Yep.
There was another question about how do you determine how many people can be in such a space so that you can gather to 25%. But would you bring back up the slide that had the occupancy information, please? And so occupancy capacity is based both, let me get this out of the way, is based both on both the gross square footage and the use of the building. It includes the capacity for customers and employees. And so for more specific guidance, it points you to open safely again. And so the question that the professional asked was about having suites. And so it would seem to me that the 25% is based upon the capacity of the square footage of the building and the use of the building. Courtney, do you have anything to add to that?
And I would just say that that capacity also consists of the people that are working in that space as well, and not just folks who are getting their hair done.
That's correct. So that includes staff or any people that are there. And then also that's why one of the recommendations was also that people do not wait inside of the space. So when you start to think about that, honestly, my best suggestion to this industry is to try to be as appointment based as possible. Meaning that you only have one customer and you're servicing one customer at a time. I do know that some practices are to kind of multitask and do some different things, but you have to be very considerate of that. Or is it possible that you can make some furniture adjustments of putting dryers in different spaces or places if you have the spacing capacity to do that? There's a lot of things that you have to think about and get safely creative. I use the word safely creative because you can get creative with where spacing is, but you have to make sure that you're being safe, that there's that 10 feet space between people as well to make sure that you're doing that. I think one of the biggest things that I can offer as a tip is to really get to know the do's and don'ts of COVID-19 and how it works. That way you can have an understanding of what works best for you, because I don't think that there's a one size fits all description of how to tell people to go about this, but you can just think of different things. I totally understand where you come from. In my former life, I was a salon owner, so I know the feeling of getting back to work and figuring out what you can do. And that's how I know I'm thinking about things like spacing out dryers in different spaces, staggering schedules of when people work, morning shift, afternoon shift. I also heard some restaurant owners talk about the fact that they were going to cross market to help build each other. This is a time to come together as an industry and try to figure out best practices, share it with people, and figure out different things that work. And I think together with more brilliant minds thinking around how to work safely, we can all come to solutions that will be best fitted for everyone.
Thank you. And we have another question that is similar or related to earlier on, but this one is about why barbers and salons, but not spas and tattoo parlors. I would refer back to the earlier that there's nobody on this call, including the mayor president, who made those determinations. Those were made by the governor. And so that was the level that it was made. There's a question about the effects of blow dryers and spreading the virus past 6 feet. I apologize that we can't give you a direct answer to that. I think that what your questions are pointing out, at least in part, is the seriousness of the decision to re-enter this space in the world that we are in. There is a logistical question, Courtney. Someone asked about what happens after you put in your code when you register your salon. Is that the final step?
I am actually trying to go through that while we're on the call, so I will come back to that person.
Okay.
I do think that there's some additional steps there, but I'm going to go through it myself and set up so I can answer that for you now.
Okay, and I'm not ignoring the question about access to cleaning products, and so we'll come back to that. And so is removing upholstered furniture mandated or highly recommended? The note is that most salons have unupholstered furniture, upholstered furniture, I'm sorry.
Yep. So I answered that question inside of the chat as well. The information about upholstered furniture and drapings are from the Louisiana Board of Cosmetology. What I will say is this: upholstered furniture are likely to kind of, absorb or hold more things. So if you have to make the best adjustment for your business, as I mentioned, sanitize. Think about that. You may want to look at temporary chairs, but no, it is not mandated because we do not have jurisdiction over those thoughts. What we're doing is asking people to use the best interest, because remember, everything that you do as a business sets the tone for our environment. When people are exposed, we want to try to make sure that it's not within any spaces with other people. It's just a lot of things to think about. So I would suggest that you call the Board of Cosmetology to get more information there. You can reach out to them to figure out the findings of why or what's considered, but we're just sharing the best mechanisms there. But again, if you have one client, they may not have to sit down. So that's just a little thought, food for thought there.
And there is a question about list of services that are not allowed. There is no spa license. And this person wants to make certain that they are following the rules. This is obviously a question that we will need to gather some information, and it will be a part of an email to all of the group. I do appreciate your desire to follow the rules. There's another situation about suite situations, clients passing each other's. I would just emphasize, guys, the importance of recognizing that there are certain risks with opening your business during this time, and this is an intelligent decision that each business, each professional will have to make. There is not a way that you can open a business today and there's not a risk of coming into contact with someone that has COVID-19. There aren't any safety precautions that you can put in place that would eliminate all risk. And that's why we thought it was important to have this call so that you could gather the information and make an informed decision. Do barbershops and salons have to have exterior doors that lead to the outside? And if so, how do stylists who are in suites in big buildings operate? We know the answer to that one.
I wouldn't say that I have the specific answer, but I want to give some guidance that may answer it, and also source where this answer can come from. The state fire marshal is who makes the decisions in regards to interior entrances and exterior. So for example, in the governor's messaging yesterday, an exterior anchor store of a mall that has a larger exterior door that goes outside is able to be open. However, the interior of a shopping mall like the Mall of Louisiana will not be open. So that's something that I'm pretty sure your landlord or building owner will be able to share with you, because it's basically going to look at it to say, one, is your building inside or outside? When you exit or enter your main facility, where do you go to do that? Let's say Ham and Air has the large space. That is an exterior building. So if you can exit or enter your building through an open outdoor space, then you're allowed to be open within your suites. But of course, that's going to be mandated and regulated by the people that own your building. You can also contact the state fire marshal. I will make sure that we have those contacts listed in the email that we share with you as well. They have tons of people available to be able to answer those questions for you.
Thank you. So we have another comment about the distinction between the barbering board and cosmetology. And so they are separate entities. Are there separate guidelines from the barbers board, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge and from what we've received, there is, we don't have any different guidance at this time. There probably may be more recommendations there. But again, I strongly suggest that you contact and reach out to that entity to get the information. And also, we still have time between now and the 16th when the order ends to be able to get more information. So you should check your mail. You should make sure they have the accurate contact information on. And then, of course, we talked about opensafely.la.gov. That's where you'll get the most accurate information, and your industry guidance will be shared.
And so to be clear, someone who's a stylist in California, masks are no longer required and wants to know if it's an option for Louisiana communities. My understanding is that both the professional and the customer are both required to have a mask on. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's within the guidance. You'll see that document that came from State Board of Cosmetology that requires that you wear a mask. And then honestly, even though something may not be required at any point, remember the guiding force that we want to look at here is safety first for yourself and for everyone. It doesn't hurt just to take that extra precaution. It's like riding in a car with the seatbelt, or making sure that you need to do what you need to do. We want to be smart to make sure that we're not putting ourselves or other people at risk. Because if you're exposed to COVID-19 and you continue to move around to places, you're putting exposure to other people. So it's really easy to be smart and just wear a mask. Get fashionable with it and do the right thing.
And so there are a couple of different ways that people are expressing their concern that this is risky. And I will just share with you again, I apologize for being redundant. That is why we believed it was so important to hold this conversation with you. You represent a critical part of our community. You are, in many instances, on the front line. And we wanted to make certain that you were able to make an informed decision, because ultimately you have to decide whether you will reopen and when and how you will go about doing that. So there are a couple. One, there's an anesthetician. I messed that up horribly. Please forgive me. You know who you are and what you are, and great respect. But they are also licensed under the Board of Cosmetology, and so they're working under the same rules. Someone has shared that the LBC, which I assume is the barbers, LBC should not be working at full capacity. The proposed decision to remove upholstered furniture is suggested because they are not solid surfaces and therefore cannot be sanitized or disinfected properly between services. Keisha, thank you so much for sharing that. So one of the things, Courtney and Michael, that I've not mentioned, there was a question early on about, so how do we access all of these cleaning items in PPEs, which were identified as a critical issue. One of the commitments that I will make here today for those of you who are on this call, who are in this profession, is that Metromorphosis and certainly the Mayor President has worked extensively to make equipment available to professions and community. Metromorphosis will do all that it can to support making PPEs and thermometers available on a first-come basis to people who are participants in this call. And so we will be following up with those who are part of this, and we will, within the limited resources that we have available, provide support to those who are in need in some kind of a way in terms of opening your business. At this point, we're going to move. Michael, you have a poll question 3.
Yes, the last poll for this call is, how important is ongoing support in navigating the opening of your business? So we would like you all to answer that question. Is ongoing support not needed? Are you not sure? Do you think it's somewhat important or very important? I would answer for myself and say that ongoing support is very important because this is a fluid process. We've never been in this situation before. I know that no one on this call can recall the time when the world was literally shut down. You couldn't really navigate the way that you wanted to. You couldn't go to a movie theater, because of germs, right? So as we find out more information, and as you find out more information as a network, we need to put our heads together to make sure that this information touches each other, right? So you're on the ground all the time with your colleagues, and you know what you're facing. And you may know someone that has a shop that looks a certain way, and that may have cubby holes or whatever that is. And hey, people get sick. So maybe we need to know that things need to change around. But we don't. Some of these questions, many of these questions, these are our first time hearing these questions. And so what we're doing is trying our best to connect answers to those questions and connect you all with any resources within our means, which is something that's very slim at this moment because it's not like a natural disaster in Louisiana. This is a world thing and everybody needs stuff. But we're committed to helping the community of barbers and stylists here in Baton Rouge. And I'm glad that 94% of the people said that follow-up is important. So you will be receiving some follow up, and that other 6%, we'll go ahead and follow up with you too, just to make sure that you get some information. You might change your mind by the time you get off the call. But this is a serious matter, and we want to help you all through this process as much as we can. And that's what I'm committed to. The mayor's office is committed to. Metro Marshals, our team is committed to doing that. And we're glad that you guys took your time to get on this call as well. Mr. Jessen?
Thank you very much, Michael. Courtney, you wanted to make one comment that there seems to be a great deal of whether or not barbers and stylists should even be in phase one. Would you like to make comments about that?
Sure. I see that there's a few people here that are discussing whether stylists or barbers should be in phase one. And the biggest thing that you have to remember, and I guess that you have the blessing of as well, is that you are in an entrepreneurial state where you can make the decision of what is best for you for longevity. I think that everyone here probably has a variety of opinions on where they should be or what you shouldn't do, but you are not required to open. You are not required to do services, and there's enough measures in place where, you're checking with your clients and your customers to see if this is something that you want to do. We're making the steps to get where we need to be in a COVID-19 culture, but there's ways that we need to change if we do business. Also remember that a lot of you service people who are on the front line that works with that. It may be a part of their mental health, their wellness, but I encourage you to look at your own individual situation, your own individual state of business, and consider what is best for you. Put the best safety precautions in place, be smart about what you do and how you do it. And I would definitely stay connected to your industry partners, because it seems like some really great people in here to have conversations with. Also, someone asked about waivers, and are waivers required for clients? I would say that you need to contact the cosmetology board for that to get information. But one of the guidelines that they have offered is that you do need to track your customers and have a log of the customers that you have and keep them on file for 3 years. So that lets you know that you should know who you're servicing and what you're putting in, but you'll have to talk to the Board of Cosmetology, your attorney, and things of that nature when it comes to waivers. There's a lot of unknowns when it comes to COVID, but the one guarantee is that we will all make it together for sure. And if we make sure that we practice the best safety precautions, we will do well. It's something that Mayor Broome speaks to us about all the time. You're performing a service. I think that when it comes to the cosmetology industry, each of you have a calling to connect to people in the way that you do. And if so, definitely, lean to your own personal guidance and how you decide to move forward in your purpose on that and figure it out. But we will make sure that we're doing it together. We keep you very, very informed, and that we keep everybody safe. So use your individual thoughts there.
Thank you, Courtney. There are three things that I think we will answer afterwards. First of all, thank C. Sampson for the comment of the great information. The person wants to know, have you gone through the process to know if they need another step after they enter their code?
I apologize. I stopped to do this, but I'm trying it now. I am also giving you my email in the chat so we can connect after. And that's for anyone. Please check that email. But as we go through closing remarks, I'm doing it now, I promise.
And we will be sharing information. A really critical question, and I think we need to be thoughtful about. Someone says, if someone comes in and has been exposed and has exposed the salon to COVID-19, should we close immediately?
I will share some practices that we've put into place here at City Parish, and I've seen other businesses do as well. One, if you feel that someone has been exposed, if there's anyone that has been in that space and exposed with them, you quarantine for 14 days. So if you've been exposed or someone has been exposed, again, that's having an open line of communication with your clients, that if they've been in the space with you, that they call you and tell you. You've been exposed, anyone that's been within that space should quarantine for 14 days. Pay close attention to your temperature, pay close attention to what you have going on. And then also something that we didn't really mention here, but we need to look at, absolutely build a relationship with a primary care physician. So many people don't take the time to do that. Get a primary care physician. That's somebody that you'll be able to just talk to and have a call with. So that's something you want to make sure you take the time to do.
And so to wrap up things, I'd like to thank the mayor president and for making herself available, Courtney, on behalf of the mayor and as your own self. Thank you so much for being available. Michael, thank you for investing the time in this and for the Metromorphosis team. I would just say to you in closing that there was a remark in the chat that part of this is a question of income. And access to unemployment benefits, being a person who feast or famine, you are dependent upon customers. There is a concern about customers not coming back and losing unemployment benefits. I want to say to you that no one who is helping to put this call together takes your position lightly. The one thing that I would say to you again is that every person who is a professional on this call has to make an informed decision that's based upon your comfort level and based upon the best interest of your well-being and your family. And there's nobody, no government agency that can tell you what's best for you. At the end of the day, you have to make that informed decision. Know that we are praying for you in that informed decision. And more than praying for you, we're going to work together to provide you ongoing support and to do what we can to help you gain access to the equipment that you will need in order to thrive in your business. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the wonderful questions and your participation. God bless you, and please be safe.